Thank you for listening to Organic News here on Awake Radio, where we try to give you news that is organic. Good evening and welcome to Organic News here on Awake Radio. Again, this February 11th, 2014. Today was the day we fight back. Organizations, people, it's related to Aaron Swartz from Reddit. They did some years ago, and so many sites, about 6,000 websites, all went dark to protest NSA spying. And they also did on Twitter, tweeting to Janet Yellen, the new head of the Federal Reserve. And so for those who are interested and maybe haven't participated yet, look up The Day We Fight Back. There's a Facebook page for both of those events. And also to be tweeting to Janet Yellen, the head of the Fed, letting her know that we're fed up with the Fed just creating money out of thin air and continuing the QE3s and keeping a system going that we really should let fail. So tonight we're having three or four young women on from 1 Billion Rising, which is going to be taking place this Friday for V-Day, Valentine's Day, but it's also a day that has become known for, with Eve Ensler and, pardon my phone, Eve Ensler, and putting an end to violence against women and girls. And that's going to take place all day on Friday. There's going to be flash mobs beginning at 9 a.m. down in Lower Manhattan. 11 a.m. they're going to be at City Hall. I'm not exactly sure of the schedule, but there is, if you go to 1 Billion Rising, there is a whole schedule. There's going to be events and dancing and theatrics all day long from, I think, at around 8 o'clock in the morning. Again, if I'm correct, they're going to be snaking across the Brooklyn Bridge, which I would really like to go to, but it's a little early. And it's not that it's early and you can't get up that early. It's that if I get up that early and go to an event that's that early, then I'll be crashing that much earlier. And because I want to have energy and stick around for the later events that are going on later in the day, you know, I just won't be able to do it all. I might need to take a break and go home and take a nap and then go back out. But anyway, we are going to play one song from 1 Billion Rising. Paul is going to play it while we get Christine from 1 Billion Rising on the line, and then we will be back.
We are the water, we are the sun, we are the daughters, this is our revolution.
thank you for tuning in. And we have Christina Liu.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you're from 1 Billion Rising Conversations?
Correct.
Oh, and so how did you get involved with 1 Billion Rising, and what is 1 Billion Rising?
Sure. Well, to start with a little background on what 1 Billion Rising is, 1 Billion Rising is an event that is under the global organization called V-Day, which, put simply, is an organization that aims to end violence against women and girls. And it was born from Eve Ensler's Vagina Monologues initially, which was a play that Eve wrote after interviewing hundreds of women around the world, and quite some asked them to talk about their vaginas. And it was a really beautiful way of using that conversation to not just talk about body, but to talk about various identities, about various womanhoods, about various sexualities, and really talking about the female body as a place of both war and also a place of redemption. The female body is so highly politicized wherever we go. And so she really used these conversations, which she turned to beautiful monologues, to open a doorway to talk about how do we end violence against women. So that's how it initially started with Vagina Monologues. And since then, it's become this gigantic global movement that has mobilized a lot of communities around the world. 1 Billion Rising right now is in its second year of operation. And what it is it's a call to action on one day of the week, on one day of the year. This year it is February 14th, which is on Valentine's Day this Friday. And it encourages grassroots activism to happen around the world. So it really brings local communities together. It asks people to do activism that makes sense within their communities. It bonds women to each other in a very real way. But last year, the entire mantra was using dance as a way to release as empowerment and as community building. This year, 1 Billion Rising, they've called it 1 Billion Rising for Justice. And so they're opening up the conversation to talk about how all injustices are linked. All oppressions are linked. When we talk about one injustice, we inevitably talk about all other injustices also. When we talk about violence against women and girls, we have to talk about political injustices, economical injustices, having clean water in places. They're all linked in different ways. So it's kind of it's a chillingly loving mantra of we have a lot more similarities in our fights than we do differences. And that by trying to do good in one corner of the world, you really are infecting all other places as well. So that's what 1 Billion Rising is. Joya and Melissa later on will talk more about the dance aspect of it.
Did it get started in like a particular area, like the Congo? Because I know that Eve Ensler was pretty involved in the violence that was going on with the women in the Congo.
Right. So every year there's sort of spotlight locations that are given particular focus on. And the Congo was actually one of them. Haiti was another one. But what 1 Billion Rising really tries to do is not prevent the conversations from happening in any communities, so that, regardless of whether the community is spotlighted that year or not, that they are encouraged to rise together and to spread the message to one another, regardless of where they are in the world.
Right. So, like, I did see the Vagina Monologues. It was actually quite a while ago. It was in the 90s when it was at Madison Square Garden.
Right.
It had to be, I don't know, maybe 95 or 6 or something like that. And then I also, got familiar with Eve when I used to work at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, upstate. She would come up there and
oh, that's lovely.
I'm sorry?
That's really lovely. Yeah, Eve does so much traveling around the world to meet as many local communities as possible.
And then just recently she's been around a lot. In New York, she showed up at the Stop War on Syria protest that we had at Times Square.
Right.
And it was super, super hot out that day. And so she spoke there. And then, because I'm always out with my camera, like taking, filming, doing videos and taking pictures. And then after that, I attended two of the discussions that she had at the ABC carpet. One with,
Right, yeah.
Malalai Joya. That was a really, really good one.
We met there as well several months ago to plan for this year's 1 Billion Rising too. And she made it to our first meeting in November. So, she's very highly involved with each of the local movements that are happening. And speaking of which, she's actually going to be in New York City on the day of the Rising, on the 14th.
Malalai Joya is going to be here on Friday?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, the V-Day has planned some really phenomenal events. Their theme for this year is Just Love, which it's a really, really beautiful message attached to it of just, solving injustices at its very, very core is actually a very simple thing. And it just requires love, because through love, you're able to see other people's perspectives. Through love, you're able to make yourself vulnerable, to listen to other people's stories. Through love, we put differences aside and we become a larger community. And so there's a huge focus on sort of this tenderness that I think is attached to the Rising this year.
Oh, that sounds so wonderful.
But V-Day has planned these wonderful events, one of which is during the day, and it encourages anyone to come by and to release their stories, to share with one another. They have, psychologists on board if people sort of reach a particularly charged emotional state while sharing their stories, but it's just a safe space for everyone to gather and to support one another. And then at night, there is a giant event in Hammerstein Ballroom where there's going to be multiple keynote speakers as well as a giant dance in celebration.
What time is that going to be? I went to that last year, and boy, did I have a good time.
I hope you can attend all of the events on the day of the Rising.
I looked at, all the flash mobs. The thing that was really intriguing me was there's some kind of a dance performance they're going to do. And I don't know if that's like just kind of for a certain amount of people, but I love dancing. It's one of my favorite things in the world.
As it should be. I can definitely speak a little bit about that. Well, for the dance component, the reason why that's such a huge part of 1 Billion Rising, sort of the call to action was for everyone to walk out of their places of work, of school, of their institutions, and then come together and dance and release, because dance is something that's physical. It's in the body, it's earthy, it's grounding. It's a universal language among any cultures. And it is also reclaiming of the body, a body that has so much been a place of terror and of assault and of violence. And so reclaiming our body, reclaiming our stories. But in terms of the specifics of the New York City Rising on Friday, I am part of a subcommittee that is planning a variety of risings around the city. We've self-titled our group the New York City Artivists, and we want to link the city together through art and rise through art. And that we think that artistic expression, not just dance and performance, but visual art, music, spoken word, film screening, that these are all great ways to connect people and to share messages. So starting from 8 a.m. in the morning, we have sort of collected a group of people that we are calling snakers, which are mobile, on-the-ground street activists that will be using dance and movement gestural vocabulary to walk between events and connect them physically through the subway system, on the street. It's a very visible grassroots effort for just, the average New York City person trying to walk to work, who might not go out of their way to attend an event, but just see these women around the city mobilizing together, walking, and, we want red face paint and joy and colors as we navigate through the city. So we're starting across Brooklyn Bridge in the morning. And we're starting our first flash mob around City Hall at 9 a.m. And from there, every 2 hours, we're going to have flash mobs in various New York City landmarks, including Washington Square Park, Union Square, Grand Central Station, Times Square. And we also have a flash mob taking place in East Harlem as well. So those will be happening throughout the day from 8 until 4 p.m. We've also organized several film screenings. There's a film screening in Hell's Kitchen that's happening. We have a theater performance on the Upper East Side. We have a visual art display space in Soho. And so there's really just a variety of things happening around the city that we want to reach out to local neighborhoods for people to find their own unique way of rising and whatever that expression may be.
I have another event that I was. It's called Justice is Care. Say something beautiful.
Yes.
And
Yes.
That's going to be at Fordham University.
In the Bronx. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Project Bully Free Zone and 1 billion Rising for Justice. And I'm looking at what time on. They say I was sent a ticket. It's free.
Yeah, so there's
free.
a link to be able to RSVP to that event, and they're also doing a really wonderful set of poetry readings and testimonials and dance and performance there as well. All the information can be found on the 1 Billion Rising website, which is just 1 Billion Rising, one spelled out, the letters, .org. And if you click on Find an Event and zoom into New York City, there's little 1 Billion Rising pin thingies on different places of the city that have risings. So that's a great place to find all the events. But yeah, the one in the Bronx is really wonderful. They're really working on supporting the neighborhood in terms of providing clothing and food for some of the more poverty-stricken neighborhoods in the area. But yeah, I think it'll also be a really great event with a lot of art involved, actually. Yeah.
It's organized partly by the Bronx Borough President's Office, Fordham University. Yeah, that sounds really. And I think Lynn Stewart, I believe, is going to be out and about that day. I know
Possibly. There's a lot of. I don't have all of the names off the top of my head, but if again on the 1 Billion Rising website, if you look up the Just Love event, they have a whole list of all of the keynote speakers that will be there, and they have some big ticket people that will be there, which is really phenomenal. I mean, V-Day has become such a visible movement that there are a lot of highly influential people that have openly stated their involvement with it. A lot of celebrities who are in support of V-Day. So it's really amazing that it really has become a very visible global movement about violence prevention against women and girls, and that's amazing. It's really amazing. I mean, that is now is part of popular culture. It's not obscure for someone to talk about organizing to prevent domestic violence or rape or sexual assault. That wasn't really part of our vocabulary, I feel, even like a decade or two ago. But the fact now, I mean, the theater performance that's happening in the Upper East Side, which is actually where I am right now, involved some performances by high school girls in the New York City area who go to performing arts schools. And I've been meeting with them the last several months, and they've been writing beautiful monologues and personal testimonials about ending rape culture and slut shaming in high schools. And these are girls that are ages, 14 to 18, and they're thinking very critically about these things already. And they're having very smart and critical discussions about their body, about their sexuality. And I think a lot of that is a result of the fact that talking about women, talking about girls, talking about providing safe spaces for them has really infused into our daily conversation.
So I'm looking at the 1 Billion Rising for Justice site, and just to talk about a little bit about the campaign. And I was trying to find exactly the causes, because I really wanted to try to find and so I could read like some of the facts about the violence that really is happening in other parts of the world that might be difficult for for a lot of people who we don't maybe we hear about it on the news, but
sure,
we don't really it's so far away, so
right.
I mean, and it's really not a an easy thing to talk about.
It's happy, yeah. It definitely isn't, and I think especially being in America, a lot of people that do hear these things, these statistics, and live here, think that they are happening in third world countries. That it doesn't affect a first world country like America, and that absolutely is not the case. I think the statistics in America are that 1 in 5 women in her lifetime will experience violence, whether that's a beating, an assault, domestic violence. And that's an appalling statistic. The global statistic is 1 in 3 women, which is where 1 Billion Rising initially came from. That 1 in 3 women, according to a UN statistic very recently, will experience violence in her lifetime. And that amounts to about 1 billion people in the world, which is a very, very shocking thing to say about the status of our world right now. And it's highly upsetting. But yeah, I probably should have mentioned earlier, but that's where the title 1 Billion Rising came from. That it's a call to action for all women survivors, allies, and people who love them. And this absolutely includes men. I've heard a lot from various men where they feel they don't have a place in this conversation or in this movement, that it's sort of like a woman-only space. And that absolutely isn't true. It's everybody's fight, really, because when you end violence against women and girls, you better a lot of things. Again, the injustices are linked. When you can empower one group, everyone else is empowered as well.
If I wanted to, just really quickly, because when I did go to the ABC carpet when Dr. Dennis Mukwege was there, and that was really like amazing. Like this guy was just truly amazing. And so on V-Day's website, it gives a little bit of their history in the Congo. And it just talks a little bit about in December of 2006 when Eve Ensler interviewed Dr. Mukwege, the head of the Pangia hospital, about the issues of sexual violence in the the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I just had to get that in order there.
It's a bit of a mouthful. It's a mouthful.
Yeah. So when she went to this hospital to meet him, it says that she traveled to Bukavu and Goma to visit the Panzi Hospital and the Heal Africa Hospital in May of 2007. The violence perpetuated against women there and the scale of damage that Eve saw firsthand was horrific. In partnership with women survivors, Christine Schuler, Deschriver, and UNICEF, V-Day initiated the Congo campaign, of which a main goal was to create the City of Joy, a concept which women survivors conceived. Developed by women on the ground in partnership with V-Day and the Panzi Foundation, the construction of the City of Joy started in September 2009 and the doors opened June of 2011. It says, since 2007, a widespread global campaign in support of the women of the Congo has been harnessed by V-Day activists, keeping a sustained media focus on the issues and raising much needed funds for the immediate needs of communities on the ground in the Congo. I mean,
Amazing.
I actually got accepted as a delegate from Code Pink to go to Gaza on March the 5th. I have, this incredible need sometimes to just, see things for myself. And
Right, absolutely.
it's going to be on March the 8th is International Women's Day. And I believe that 1 Billion Rising and Eve Ensler is going to be involved in this somehow. Like, I don't know if they're going to be there, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that they are.
There's a chance that VA could be involved. I'm not sure about the specifics of that. Although 1 Billion Rising is specifically just one day of the year. So this year it will be the 14th, but we have definitely, at least for the New York activists, we've talked about what ways we can all stay together after this event is over and continue mobilizing the events that we've come up with throughout the year in preparation for next year's 1 Billion Rising, which will be the third and last of the 3-year 1 Billion Rising series. So we're in the second year right now, but the Rising is specifically just one day of the year, and the idea is that everybody globally is planning their event for this day, and we're rising as a global unit, which I think there's something very powerful about that, even if we don't know exactly what's happening around the world, knowing that millions and millions, billions of people around the world are mobilizing at the same time we are in our local community. That's a really great point. I think, like with the Rising, it brings people together in such a empowering and specifically grassroots way that we all have these alliances now, having worked with each other through the Rising. The number of activists that you meet, of do-gooders and of volunteers and these amazing women and men and mobilizers, we absolutely are inspired to keep the movement going of figuring out what next steps are after Friday's over. So yes, it's by no means a culmination. It's simply a celebrating point for what is to come next, I believe.
So I just wanted to ask, do you have to go? It's it's just about 6:30.
Yeah, is Melissa Riker coming on?
Yeah, so
about dancing at this point.
We'll take a quick break and then we'll get
Okay.
And
I might need to go. I have a rehearsal with my high school girls who are going to be performing on Friday, which is very exciting. So I think I might duck out to see how they're chugging along with their rehearsal.
Okay. So we'll take a break and then we'll come back with the next guest.
So wonderful. Thank you. And just as a couple closing remarks for anyone who is interested in being involved, the 1 Billion Rising website really should have a comprehensive list of events. If you're in the New York City area, though, we definitely want as many bodies with us to move around the city with us as possible. So yes, be on the lookout for that and join us. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I hope I
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Mine too. I'll see
All
you.
right. In solidarity and with love, as always.
Amen. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.
So we are back. Thank you, Paula, for handling the songs and the breaks and dealing with the commercials. I want to, be grateful for the people at Awake Radio that they stay up until after midnight, being on the radio and putting in a lot of work. So we're waiting for Melissa Riker to be available. And as soon as we find out that she's available, we'll have her on. And so in the meantime, I wanted to play a bit of the recording that I made last night from the first vigil for No Separate Justice that took place at 150 Park Row over by the Metropolitan Correction Center, where people are being kept in pre-trial solitary confinement, not even, without due process, haven't been accused of anything, and they're just being indefinitely detained, tortured, in rooms without windows, it was a really, really good gathering. It was freezing out, but at least 50 or so people showed up. And this is actually the second part. The woman's name, who's the MC, is Sally for No Separate Justice. And the speaker's lawyer will speak after Sally. Her name is Pardis Cabray. And Jean Theo Harris, who is a political science teacher at Brooklyn College, who was actually a teacher for Fahad Hashmi, who has been detained, and he's in solitary confinement for, I can't even say how many years, I'm not sure exactly, but it's at least 3. And so here's from last night, the vigil of No Separate Justice.
The vigils for Fahad back in 2009, 2010. One of the groups involved was Theaters Against War, which Ryan and I were both part of. And the reason we decided we wanted to try to do something outside the MCC was because of a single article in The Nation, which was written by Jean Theo Harris. That article moved us all to focus and try to get people coming out to these vigils back in 2009, 2010. In that time, those of us who have been able to work with Jean know she is an amazing, fierce campaigner for justice. She's relentless, and I think for a lot of us, she's the reason we're out here tonight. She also was Fahad's professor at Brooklyn College, and I'm going to let her talk now. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I struggle at all. It's cold. Thank you so much for coming on this very cold night. I come here tonight wearing many hats. Well, one hat, but many figurative hats. And the first hat is that of a teacher. A decade ago, I had a young man in a civil rights seminar I was teaching, and he wrote a seminar paper for me on the civil rights issues that Muslim groups were facing after 9/11. And he and I worked on that paper together, and I wrote him a letter of recommendation, and I sent him to graduate school. And that young man was Fahad Hashmi. And 4 years later, he ended up back in this building. And that issue of civil rights and civil liberties was not an academic issue anymore. Miles from that classroom I taught him, he spent 3 years pre-trial in this building. And so we began to come out to say, if we are going to teach about civil rights, then there needs to be this witness. And I come here tonight also, as many of you know, as an historian.
and is an historian of the civil rights movement. And while the civil rights movement is now lauded as one of the great shining beacons of American history, the people in that movement spent years and years standing on dark streets like this. Years and years being called traitor, being called communist, being called un-American. And now, after those years and decades of sacrifice, we have come to see what they did as righteous, as American, just as we will see what we are doing tonight. But we have to remember that it took years and decades. And I come here finally as a person of faith, as a Christian, because faith traditions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, have a sacred responsibility to bear witness. That you both, there is something important, there is something transformative, and something morally necessary about bearing witness. And so we stand on this bizarrely deserted street, the only deserted street probably in Lower Manhattan, in this city of 9 million, to say again, not in our name, not in our city, not in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, again, is somebody who has done a huge amount to build this movement. She is a senior attorney at the Center for Constitutional Rights, and she'll be a familiar face to many of us. She also is Fahad Hashmi's lawyer, and I want to introduce, very, very happy that she's here with us tonight, Artis Kebriai from the Center for Constitutional Rights.
Hey everyone, so encouraging to see you. I was thinking the only other prison I go to is ADX, where you don't get crowds like this, and Guantanamo, where you certainly don't get crowds like this. So as you may have heard me say before, I come at this work from Guantanamo, from having represented men there for years, and I wanted to make some connections to torture and secrecy and unjust punishment there and what happens right here. You know, we recognize, I can't hit my lips, so if I look weird, we recognize torture at Guantanamo. The first person I met at Guantanamo had been held in solitary confinement for 1 year. His conditions of confinement were modeled after the MCC, were modeled after ADX. They were modeled after solitary confinement that happens in this country for thousands of people, and this happened for years. He was losing his vision when I met him. He'd been in solitary for a year. He'd been losing his vision from staring at the wall too close to his face. As you heard Sally say, the UN, the international expert on torture, has said that solitary confinement of more than 15 days can be torture, can be treatment. That was a person who had been in solitary for a year. Fahad was in trial solitary for 3 years. This is with a presumption of innocence. This is as he was trying to work on his defense in the face of a 70-year sentence, against the U.S. government. There are people in this country who have been in solitary confinement for decades. So torture certainly happens right here. At Guantanamo, we talk about secrecy. When Fahad was at MCC, and for people who are at MCC right now under special administrative measures, which is sort of a euphemism for a gag on the ability to speak, and not just the person to speak, but for anyone who has access to him to be able to speak, he did write about his treatment, his conditions, his torture. His attorney, his family members, his mother, his father, his brother, Gospel couldn't have come out of that prison and talked to anyone about what they heard, about what he said. No reporter would have had access to him in that prison. As you heard from one Mendes' statement, the UN expert on torture, journalists have requested access to the MCC, to ADX, to solitary confinement prisons in the US for years and have been repeatedly denied. So that's as far as access and transparency goes in the United States. When we talk about unjust punishment and fairness, the lack of fairness at Guantanamo, you have a client who has been at Guantanamo for 12 years for allegedly being a cook for a terrorist group that no longer exists. There are a lot of us and a lot of people in the human rights community who recognize that his detention is absurd, it is inhumane, it is cruel, it just doesn't make sense to imprison someone for over a decade for having been a kitchen hand for a group that no longer exists. Fahad pled and struck a deal for a 15-year sentence, was going to face 70 years in prison for having stored socks and luggage in his apartment. An acquaintance's socks and luggage in his apartment for 2 weeks. That was socks and ponchos, sorry. Again, it's cold, my brain's not. Socks and ponchos in his apartment for 2 weeks. So as far as the breadth of detention, that is allowed and produced in exactly the same way here in the material support laws that are being increasingly used and that are the most common charge in prosecutions post 9/11 in this war on terror context. So that's as far as the breadth of detention goes. In some cases, the connections between Guantanamo and what happens right here are exactly the same. When it comes to torture and secrecy, they are exactly the same. And when it comes to unjust punishment, the breadth of detention can be exactly the same. And as far as, we call for charge and trial in the Guantanamo context, we mean in charge to signify fairness. Well, fairness and criminal process for Fahad was 3 years in pretrial solitary, facing a 70-year sentence for socks and ponchos, and then a plea deal for 15 years. So that was his criminal process. That was fairness for Fahad. So when I sort of see our movement and this campaign, what I think my job is, and the job of human rights organizations working on Guantanamo, working on war on terror issues abroad, is to start making the connections better and louder here, and to have our colleagues see the connections and to have them join us next month. When I think about connections, we also need to make a lot of what we talk about here have roots in the broader criminal justice field. Solitary confinement happens for thousands of people. The disproportionate nature of what someone is charged with, what they're culpable of, and the punishment they get is out of whack, is out of control for thousands of prisoners in the country as well. Plea deals, coercive plea deals, happen for 97% of cases in the criminal justice system. So there's the criminal justice people that we also need to be bringing here. So I think those are some of the connections we need to be making, and I hope that our crowd is even bigger next month. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That makes a very good segue for our next speaker, who is Justin Mazzola from Amnesty International USA. I don't want to embarrass Justin, but he has been such a key player in getting Amnesty International USA on board. 4 or 5 years ago, when we approached Amnesty, it was really Justin who spearheaded getting this on the radar at Amnesty. He's an attorney with Amnesty. He's been with Amnesty for over 10 years, a researcher there, and he's going to be saying a few words about some of the complications that human rights groups have had trying to get access to places like MCC. Justin.
Thanks, guys. Let me know if you can't hear me. I'm cold and my jaw's starting to get a little frozen. First off, thanks to Jeannie and Sally for organizing this campaign and bringing the impetus to reconstitute these vigils around MCC and solitary confinement, and specifically around Fahad's case tonight. And especially thank you for Fossil and parties to talk about the impact on them of watching Fahad, not only as family members, but also as an attorney. And what I want to talk about a little bit today is solitary confinement. And excuse me for reading, there's a lot of technical information, so I apologize if I'm looking down. But as parties mentioned, is that this has been a long-standing issue here. This isn't about one case. Shortly after 9/11, when I started working at Amnesty, we started receiving calls from individuals who were held at detention facilities like MDC, like MCC, Hudson and Passaic in New Jersey. And the issues that we heard from attorneys with regards to access to their clients and what they were going through now is no different than what we're seeing here at MCC now with these cases and in Guantanamo and facilities all around the world that the U.S. is operating. What they've done is they then exported everything out under the war on terror, and it's now become the new norm. I think it's important to talk about Fahad's case, specifically around the pretrial detention issue. He spent 3 years under SAMS before he even went to a plea bargain. He was about on the eve of trial when he finally decided to accept the plea bargain for 15 years that parties mentioned. And his case is basically a prime example of how these measures, especially in pretrial detention, can affect a person's mental state and his or her ability to defend himself against these complicated charges and lead to cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. At any given time, there's as many as 20,000 people who are being held in supermax facilities, either at the state or federal level across this country. Thousands more are held in solitary confinement because of behavior issues or disciplinary measures. Once used only in extreme circumstances to isolate the most violent of criminals, there may be as many as 50 people currently held under SAMS, like Fahad was at this time by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The vast majority of those are under SAMS because of terrorism-related charges. MCC, according to attorneys who've spoken to Amnesty International, basically the 10 South wing, where most of these individuals are held, comprises 6 cells where prisoners are alone for 23 or 24 hours a day. The windows are blacked out. They never get outside recreation in violation of UN standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners. And the unit has been used to house, among others, pretrial detainees charged with terrorism-related offenses, most of whom have then been placed under SAMS, where any contact with the outside world or for their attorneys to be able to talk about their conditions has been restricted. As far as the effects of solitary confinement, there's a significant body of evidence with both in the U.S. and elsewhere that the isolation can be harmful to anybody's mental and physical state, even if imposed for relatively short periods. This is particularly true when accompanied by other deprivations such as the lack of information of the outside world, confinement to an enclosed space, and inadequate exercise. All examples of what somebody like Fahad went through, even just in pretrial detention. Sorry, fingers are cold. And not working. Sorry about that, guys. This is especially detrimental when it comes to pretrial detainees, where the risk of mental impairment brought on by a prolonged isolation might in certain circumstances impact on a prisoner's ability to assist in his or her defense, and thus the right to a fair trial. Detention pending trial is a preventative measure rather than punishment. It should be aimed at purposes such as preventing obstruction of the investigation or the course of justice or future harm. Restrictions placed on a pretrial detainee's contact with the outside world and with other detainees must be necessary in the individual cases and proportionate to a legitimate aim, regularly reviewed and subject to challenge. None of that.
So that was a good 15 minutes of one part of no separate justice vigil from last night in front of the MCC, the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan at 150 Park Row. And just the craziness that's going on and the inhuman treatment of people that have not even been accused or found guilty of anything. This is all pre-trial, and it's got to stop. I mean, the system just does whatever it wants. So with that, Melissa is available, so we're going to be going to her, and we're going to finish our conversation on 1 Billion Rising and V-Day that is happening all over the world this Friday, Valentine's Day, V-Day, to stop violence against women and girls. I am just giving Paula the time that she needs to connect Melissa with me. And I just wanted to, with the video that I was playing for No Separate Justice from last night, it's hard for me to keep my commentary. The camera with the built-in microphone, it's hard for me to, not be making like my private little commentary. And it, of course, unfortunately, it comes over on the video, and I apologize, but at the same time, it's I feel like it's sort of a normal response. I can't, it's hard for me to, to not just be making these sort of expressions as I'm listening to the conditions that people are living under, and I think, hello?
Hi there.
Melissa,
Hello.
thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
I was just playing one of the recordings that I did from last night, because we're talking about injustice. So they had a vigil for an organization called No Separate Justice outside of the Metropolitan Correctional Center here in Lower Manhattan. And, like a lawyer for one of the detainees spoke, and a woman, I think she's from the Center for Constitutional Rights. She's a lawyer for Center for Constitutional Rights. Various speakers, a couple of lawyers, a political science teacher for one of the detainees. So I was just playing that.
Nice.
Yeah. There's so much injustice going on in the world. It's like, it's overwhelming. But, tell us how you got involved with 1 Billion Rising and V-Day.
Okay. Well, it started because I was in Vagina Monologues.
Yay.
Yeah. I keep calling myself the narrator, and then I keep finding out that there is no narrator.
Is that the one at Cooper Union?
No, it was part of Manhattan Theater Source.
Okay.
It was a small theater down in the West Village, filled with very passionate people. And so I was the person introducing all of the different sections. And so that's how I first learned about V-Day. And then it was perfect timing because that was right when a discussion of 1 Billion Rising began. And it was probably June and then into July where I kept following what was happening. And as the call went out for being able to do different things and being able to add to the community in different ways, one of the calls was for flash mobs. And I thought, well, if I want to do anything, it's get women dancing.
Yeah.
And get as many women dancing as I can, owning their bodies and celebrating. And that was exactly what the request was. And I thought, well, I can do that. Let's make that happen.
We talked to Christine, who was on before. She was talking a bit about the dancing and being in your body. If we can talk about that just for a couple of minutes, the importance of what it means to be in your body, because to me, that is the key. To me, the mind-body connection is the key to all of our ills in society.
I think I agree with you on that one. I think that our body is the thing that we have around with us all the time, right? And there's this idea that there's some ideas that you're supposed to transcend your body. But I think that actually it's that we want to get deeper and deeper into our bodies and deeper into accepting our bodies for what they are. And
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I feel like because people get cut off from their bodies so early in life, like not just necessarily, physically. I mean, I don't mean right physically. I mean emotionally. Like a lot of people are just taught so young that you can't feel what you feel emotionally. And so if you move around too much, then you have to sometimes, that's like, then you have to listen to those feelings, which a lot of people, we're so taught to not do. And so by not moving it like too much, by not doing things like dancing, then we don't have to feel those feelings that we don't want to feel and we were taught to not feel. And this whole thing with the economy and debt lately, like to me, that's kind of just like fakery. Like the real debt is being disconnected from the body, and
oh no, keep going.
That's okay. And like the real debt is processing and getting ourselves out of that physical debt, the emotional debt, by embracing those feelings that we were taught to be cut off of, and actually having the strength and the courage to go through them and to feel them and purge them out of the body, which is not really going to be an easy thing. And that's why we need to kind of be there for one another, to help each other go through that kind of birthing process.
Well, it's also a level of celebration, right? It's a celebration and a release, and accepting who you are, and a releasing ideas of shame.
Right.
And being willing to see yourself and the person standing next to you as beautiful, and kind of letting go of an outside definition of what beautiful is and just finding joy in it.
Exactly.
And that's exactly the reason that I feel like groups of women dancing and all of us moving together was a brilliant suggestion.
We definitely need more, feminine in the world. I mean, I think like the whole world's been so overly masculinized, but not masculinized in a healthy way, like masculinized in like an extreme, like like if you show any kind of vulnerability or sensitivity, it's like if you're not to the extreme of the masculine where you're like brutal and then you're, that's just Paula. I think she's getting Joya on the line also.
Oh, okay, great. I don't know if I can speak exact.
Joya?
Hey, Joya.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going, family?
Yay, thank you for being able to make contact with us.
Oh, absolutely. I was trying to get my Skype up and running, but something was going awry, like I thought.
Well, we have you via your cell phone.
Fantastic.
It's usually a little less clear on a cell phone, so sometimes we just have to maybe like articulate like a little bit more on a phone than we do when we're on Skype, because it just comes over a little bit less clear.
Okay. If you'd like, I can keep trying.
No, I mean, don't, because then that'll take your focus off of the discussion.
Okay.
So, Melissa was just talking about like how she got involved with 1 Billion Rising and V-Day. Do you guys work for 1 Billion Rising, or?
No, actually, this was something that Kate had mentioned, that when I wrote to Kate, who actually is part of the V-Day organization and part of 1 Billion Rising New York, she was bummed that she couldn't make it into this conversation with us, but she said, really, this is just as much yours as it is ours. And
you guys sound really, special. I'm not used to hearing people speak the way you guys do. Maybe when I was at the Omega Institute, some people spoke like that, but your average, especially here in New York, it's not exactly, your typical way of that most people speak.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure if I know exactly what you mean, but I can say that as a dancer and a choreographer, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what the body needs and where I feel like people fit in. And as a woman who feels really strongly about this movement, I feel like the celebration of the body and owning what we can is really important. And it may be because, who knows, maybe because we're artists.
So, like owning your body and owning your physical body and your emotional body.
Yeah, well, they're connected.
Right, so what we were saying before about we get disconnected from our body, not just physically, but like once we're cut off from our bodies emotionally and we're not allowed to feel what we feel, we get cut off from our physical body, because then our physical body and our own feelings end up becoming our enemy. So we have to control what we feel by, constricting our breathing and constricting the muscles and bearing down to try to control the body, so that we don't feel, and that what needs to come up and come out, gets kept, underwater, so to speak. And like the reason why I feel like it's so important to be in the body is because if we're and our minds and bodies are disconnected, and we're using our minds to control and constrict what we feel, then we end up doing the same thing to the earth. To me, like the body is, our body is our own kind of little private earth, and the way that we treat it ends up being, globally, like the way that we treat the planet.
Right.
So,
well, and it ends up being the way we treat the people around us and the people that we love. Because if you're treating yourself poorly, you're going to be treating the people you love poorly, and then you're going to be treating your environment poorly.
Exactly. So, like, to me, this stuff is key because, my whole life was always dedicated to, health and fitness, but always like emotional fitness and people, like people just, they never think about how the global economy, whatever, the Fed and all this stuff could possibly be related to being cut off from your own emotions. But I've always known that is key. Being cut off from your emotions is how people get into debt. Because once you're cut off from yourself and you don't have that self-worth, the system can so easily take advantage of you and get you to buy into things when you don't have that connection to all of yourself physically and emotionally. The system can use that to its advantage and keep you in that debt that it wants to keep you in.
Absolutely. We're trained as, even in schools, and if we want to talk about how that works within our own body and our body language and the language of the school system, and how we're taught to sit in specific rows, one behind the other. We have a specific purpose, a specific task at hand within the educational system, and just, even just physically and emotionally what that means, and the concept that if you're in the front of the class, then you're a better student. You're more, in tune with what's going on. Whereas if you're in the back of the class, you're a lesser student. And just that understanding that our society has created, that does affect our bodies, that affects the way that we function within the world. And so it's all this, internal processing that we are trained as children when we're growing up to live life in this particular fashion.
Well, like one thing that comes up a lot that I've been hearing so much about, like in the military and the police department, is we live in this world of just like following orders. Following orders in the military. You just have to like not listen to your gut and just follow orders. And I'd like to bring Joya, in on the conversation also, because like to me, like that's exactly the opposite of the way that nature works. If you're a real authority person, and because it's because I studied like the dysfunctional family system and what healthy relating is, since I was really young, because I grew up in kind of like a dysfunctional, like more than dysfunctional. I mean, it was like it's abusive, and so one of the passionate things that I always wanted to have when I got older was, I learned how to have healthy, loving, respectful relationships. And just blindly following orders does not fall under the category of healthy relating. A real authority is going to be encouraging you to follow your gut. I mean, how do we learn how to ride a bike or ski or play an instrument or whatever? I mean, you have to do that within. You have to find your own mind-body connection inside of yourself. Like nobody can order you to like learn how to ride a bike. Like nobody can order you to, like someone trying to order you or get you to blindly follow orders is someone who's just trying to override your instincts and use your body for their own agenda. Someone who's a real authority person is going to encourage you to find it within, is going to encourage you to find it for yourself and find your own authority within yourself. So, it's just the opposite of, anybody, any good teacher wants someone to find it within themselves and to not just blindly follow what they say.
Although at the same token, it's really hard within the society because we're told to teach to the test. So you have to have X amount of knowledge in order to pass the test that we've set what determines who's a good individual, who's a knowledgeable individual in this world. And so there's no leeway in order to figure out a way to creatively explore everyone's own individual capabilities and personalities.
Right. Well, exactly. Like there are so many people on the planet, and that's the challenge is who's got the time to be giving to all of these people on an individual basis. But that's that is the whole challenge.
Well, I think the element that I keep hearing from what we're talking about within education, within a financial climate, and even within the sense of kind of owning your body and dancing and celebrating is...
This is still Melissa speaking, is that right?
This is now Melissa speaking. That was Joya before.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I want to... Go ahead.
That's okay. There's the thing that I keep hearing is a sense of needing to foster a sense of self-value, so that as individuals we know from a deep place what our value is, so that we can stand up for ourselves when we need to stand up for ourselves, so that we don't spend time overspending on things we don't need, so that as leaders, we can confidently lead and allow people to lead themselves. Because as you said, someone who is a little over-entrenched or feeling like authority is the way to versus leading, which are things that I see as two different things. A leader will guide, facilitate,
Right.
and then release.
Right. Exactly.
Right? And it causes, hopefully, what it does is it aims people in the right direction, and then they're inspired enough to keep moving on their own.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like raising a child. It's just like being a parent.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Exactly.
of it like farming. I think of it, parenting, whatever the role, whether it's parenting, whatever like position of leadership or authority that you're in, it's like being a farmer. It's like cultivating, it's cultivating the earth and then allowing nature to, nature has to be a part of it. I mean, we're cutting nature out of everything that we do and doing everything with the intellect and the will and trying to force nature to do and to give us what we want rather than, interacting with nature in a harmonious way. And you can't force, a farmer doesn't force nature to grow. I mean, children and parents don't, you can't force your child to grow. And that's kind of like the, what our society has become is forcing nature to give us, injecting, like in that Food Inc. documentary, like they're injecting the little baby chicks to make it grow, faster, so that it can grow and be a chicken, faster than it's really capable of, And meanwhile, the poor thing's bones can't grow to keep up with the weight of the poor chicken. And so you got it's literally like a baby chick that looks like a grown chicken. And to me, I saw that when I saw that video and I saw that poor chicken that bones were not strong enough to hold the weight. To me, that's us. Like, that's what we are. Like, we look like adults on the outside, but we really can't hold ourselves up on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Or hold each other up.
Well, I feel like we're almost right now in time living in a place of a parallel existence where that has been happening in a really
Is this Melissa?
scary way. But there are people who there are people who I think have almost forced themselves out of that existence and have stood up for their own food and are actually cultivating food the way it should be cultivated and finding ways of sharing it with people through community-supported agriculture and educated ways of cultivating an organic, informed community. And in the same way, or at least I would like to think that in the same way, 1 Billion Rising last year was, according to statistics, the single largest movement or the single largest day of activation ever, which is amazing. So hopefully that means that in that day of us dancing and shouting and moving what we could move, it meant that there was an awakening happening. And I think it did end up shifting things in the world. I know for me and for a number of the women that were involved in this day last year, just walking away with a sense of, we've done that and we can continue to do this and we will continue to own this moment.
Right.
And I will do what I can do to keep myself safe and keep others safe.
Is that a smoke alarm?
I think it might be. I think there's some cooking of organic food going on in my house.
I hate to say it, but I actually disabled my smoke alarm in my apartment because you can't even cook without the thing going off, unfortunately.
Well, so in a funny loop of this conversation, what's actually being cooked is a chicken from a farm,
Oh,
but a chicken from a real farm with real chickens.
Isn't that funny? Sort of. Where do you guys live? Where's the siren coming from?
Joya, is that
might
your
be
siren?
me. That's my siren. Sorry, guys. We have a very, typical fashion of how our lives are going right now through this conversation. Talking about chicken, cooking chicken, fire alarm, fire engines.
That is really funny, right? It's like here we are talking about these subjects and you have all the background noises to go with it.
We're just doing that for the radio, so it all seems real.
Yeah, right? It's all on cue.
Well, bringing it back to 1 Billion Rising, one of the things as far as, being a leader and opening up ways so that people can find their own voice and find their own power from within. I think one of the really important ways in which that was done was through the Break the Chain choreography. I don't know if you guys spoke about that, Debbie Allen's choreography. Well, in part of the choreography, two parts of the choreography, she has moments where people are to improvise. So there's given in the structured choreographed piece, there's time where people can find the movement and feel what's moving them in that, moment, in that time, in that place, in order to express themselves freely, which I think really, opens up the way for people to own their experience and own this, activism that we have globally. And this is a dance that's performed globally by, however many people, which is so empowering to know that we are part of this process and that there are people all over the world that are doing the same thing. And yet in these moments, in these choreographed moments for improvisation, we all get a chance to have our own voices heard. I think that's really strong and empowering.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. It really, I mean, for so long, like I'm going to be 50 on my next birthday, which doesn't really go down so well. I'm like, I'm trying to be like really happy about it, but I've just like when I was so young, like I started doing like meditation and yoga in like the early 80s, and I felt like I was weird, like because something inside of me was always pushing me to just connect to something with more meaning, because you can just like I felt so disconnected from anything that had meaning. I was always like doing like this searching for more meaning, and reading like all these self-help books and all these relationship healthy communication books and stuff and I didn't really know many people like that then. Most of the people that I was kind of connecting to and doing yoga or meditating with were like much older than me. And the funny thing was that, I would have like all these, like that's when cassette tapes were still around, and I would have all these like self-help cassette tapes, but then to the other extreme, I had all these like heavy metal tapes too, like, Judas Priest and all, like, so I was always dealing with this kind of duality that I like had to balance my light and my dark. Like my darkness was always condemned, like whatever, anger or just feeling powerful, like was always condemned. And like I was always trying to figure out how to balance the two. Like, I didn't want to feel like, anger or just feeling powerful or assertive was bad. And that's always kind of what I ended up being trained to feel like anger is a bad thing. Can anybody speak to?
Well, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And this
So
is Melissa.
This is Melissa. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm testing out a microphone. I don't know if you can hear me any differently than you could hear me before. So when it's interesting that you say that, because I never found any solace through something that was particularly meditation, but I did find who I was through dance.
Yeah.
And I had always danced as a child. I was always dancing. It was just part of what I did, part of what I needed to do. But then at some point, well, when I was in high school, I was given the gift from my teacher. She just gave me the keys to her studio, and I had been trained as a ballerina, so everything was very precise and very specific, and there were specific steps, and it was about rules, and you did this thing at this right time, and this count, and what have you. I was never particularly good at counts, but what she said to me at some point is she said, you just need to dance. You just need to go into that room and dance. And you need to dance out whatever you need to dance out, and it will help you heal.
Man.
And the gift, the incredible gift that was for me to have the freedom to go into a big empty room and just dance because I needed to was, I don't know how I would have gotten through those years if I hadn't been able to do that. But it has certainly informed how I treat my students and how I guide them to find their own voices. And it's also, it even informs how I choreograph and, at what point within the choreography do I feel my vision is important, and at what point in the choreography is it more necessary to see the voices of the amazing, beautiful dancers that are performing the work. So I think, to speak to what you were talking about, it's everybody has their own journey of how they find that peace for themselves, I think. And for me, it just happened to be through dance and through my body, so that those things could all be in unison.
And that was your ballet teacher, did you say?
Yeah, she was my ballet teacher, and she was definitely a ballet teacher. She was an amazing woman who trained us in a small studio in the back of her house, and she had the whole deal, like the cane and the little dog, and she smoked while we were dancing, and it was the whole thing. She was hardcore, but she had an incredible, generous heart, and those of us that were there and dedicated to dancing with her, she loved us as if we were her children. And so when she saw that I needed the freedom to just dance, she offered that to me.
That's like the best therapy. Physical, is the best therapy in the world.
Yes. And you have the freedom, one of the interesting things that dancers are always dealing with, and the reality of dance, is that we have this duality of our own going on, where we have this power that many people wish they had, this ability to own our bodies and really use them as an instrument. But we're trained, as we're growing up, to be constantly judging that instrument and to be constantly finding it lacking.
Right, and to be ashamed and not good enough or...
Right. And so that's why I was saying before that I think that one of the reasons dancing as a group of women to something like Break the Chain, where it is made to dance as a group in celebration with these moments, these beautiful moments of pure freedom, and then beautiful moments of choreography that are really possible for just about everyone to do. It's a moment where you can work towards feeling a lot less judgmental of yourself and just being willing to celebrate how amazing it is to be full of adrenaline and dancing with groups of other women.
It's it takes like such surrender to just let go and get out of your head.
It does.
Like I love yoga practice for that reason. It can bring up I guess it's you have to maybe confront all of those thoughts or feelings of apprehension maybe first, and just kind of breathe through that. See, I think maybe that's what we have to kind of accept. We're not going to maybe get around, like you have to go through those yucky feelings. That's the challenging part. Is Gaia?
Yeah, kind of
We had someone else that was
there.
Hi. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Who's speaking? Sorry. Who is that?
This is Pangia, Gaia Talk 2.
Oh, hi. Okay.
Pangia Macri, Gaia Talk 2, Skype.
Okay, welcome to
the
conversation.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, and ladies, if you can mute in between each other's talk, because there's 4 of you, it might help out too for you all to hear better.
Thank you, Paula.
Just recorded it. Thank you.
Great, thank
to
you.
Do what? I'm sorry.
Paula was asking if exactly to mute while someone else is speaking, because there's four guests on, right?
Okay.
There's Melissa, there's Joya.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there's
Hi, Joya.
And
hi.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that okay, Pangia. Pangia. Okay, so tell us how you got involved in 1 Billion Rising and V-Day.
I'm part of a Unitarian church, which is an all-faith church, so not in one direction. And we have been putting on the vagina monologues in the last 6 years. This is our 6th. So we met Eve. She came to present one of our members a letter, a woman who had started the first all-female sex shop in New York in the 70s. Yes, Eve's Garden, which still exists in New York, and her name is Del Williams. And Eve came, and since then we have sort of always jumped in and helped when V-Day, the small group in New York, has needed anything. We volunteered. And when she started 1 Billion Rising, she asked us to join in outreach for New York City, which we gladly did, which was last year. And I'm sure you've already heard a lot about it. And the second year as well. And it has been an amazing connection, also to get to know Eve a little bit more and the whole central group. Have you talked a lot about V-Day already?
Well, people are just sharing, their experiences with it. So, feel free to express, like how you got involved and.
Well, I think that what's really important, again, 1 Billion Rising is not just V-Day. It started as the anniversary, which I'm sure has already been mentioned, the anniversary of V-Day. But it is meant to bring everyone together, and also all forms this year of injustices, because most of these injustices end up in violence in somewhere, especially gender-based violence. But V-Day itself has a very small organization. And so when anyone in the whole world puts on a production of the Vagina Monologues or the 2 plays that have been released this year, every bit of money goes to help stop violence against women and girls, and 90% goes local. So my experience with V-Day is that I have gotten to learn about incredible organizations that help to stop violence against women and girls, and also educate young boys and help also boys of sexual violence in New York City. So that is one of the most marvelous things that I have been able to do, is that that it doesn't go to V-Day. Our money really only 10%, but 90% goes to help people here in the place. If you're in China or in South America, it goes local and it stays local.
You know, it's becoming like really prevalent, the violence against I mean, so many things, like, you know, the most vulnerable, you know, women, children, animals, and the environment. So I guess I'd like to maybe ask everyone, what do you believe is at the root of that?
Does someone else want to go? This is Pangia again. Can I jump in? I'm sorry if I'm jumping in.
No,
is that okay? Everyone?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. For me, when we talk about violence against women, it's really violence against the feminine and everything that represents the feminine,
right,
which is the earth, the mother. When young boys discovered they couldn't have children and so forth, I can give a Reader's Digest of my beliefs, they started cutting their own flesh. In other words, they denied their own feminine side, and everything feminine became something nasty. And if you do that, when a man does deny his sensitivity, which is considered feminine, then what do you do with that energy? It turns violent, and women become a symbol. It isn't even really against women. When I see how much gender-based violence there is, and violence against animals and the earth, it is this denial of that feminine energy in all of us.
Exactly. I mean, I agree, because I was saying it earlier, right? We all have traits of masculine and feminine. I mean, in nature's perfect balance, to me, is the balance of masculine and feminine, you know, the yin and the yang, night and day. You know, nature is about balance, and we, you know, because of profit, which is just competitive, and it's like an over masculinization of society, and anything representing even a healthy balance, healthy femininity, healthy vulnerability is looked at like, you know, like it's so homophobic. It's almost like, you know, just gay bashing, or just feminine bashing. Any trace of even just caring or gentleness is looked at like, oh my God, you know, you deserve to be killed or something, if or you know, tortured or something, if you even show the slightest bit of caring. And I mean, it's all because of profit and keeping the system going for those who that are making a lot of money off of it. Did we lose anybody? We just want to make sure everybody's still there, because
I'm back. It's Melissa. I fell away for a moment, but I'm back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, someone was writing. Okay, I'm just so Pangia was just saying about, right, it's the denial of the feminine in, you know, the healthy feminine in everyone that's creating like a lot of the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Would Joya like to say anything?
Well, I was trying to keep my phone muted as requested. I had just a scenario Friday, where I've been auditioning students.
Sorry, there's something really a little bit loud going on in someone's mic. If they could maybe just mute it while Joya is saying something. Oh, I think Tanya. I
That's
think
better.
okay. Go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's
I
okay.
think it was Joya.
I'm patient.
No, it might have been me, but I did mute. I did mute.
Okay.
I
Okay.
had this scenario last week Friday where I'm auditioning students in the 5th grade for a dance program, an after-school dance program in the South Bronx. And they're primarily Latino students. And I had this one student who showed tremendous potential and willingness in order to engage in all of the different dance vocabulary I was using for the audition. And I thought he was a prime candidate for the program. And then afterwards, one of the teachers in the school came up to me and asked how well the student was doing and whether or not he would get in. And he informed me that this particular student has been having issues in the classroom because he shows a more feminine side than the rest of the students. And he was just so excited that this particular student decided to, find his voice through dance and through movement. And I think it's really wonderful. And I was really glad that he was already on my list of students that would be accepted. I hope he's not listening because, no one knows who got in yet. But, and that the school was really aware of that and try to find outlets for students who, are in these particular communities where machismo is so prevalent and such, a driving force of, genders and within these communities, that I thought it was very important. And I was really excited that the school community would look to dance in order to have these, students who may be struggling with, just their natural ways of being and living in this world and living in society in order to filter and hone that through movement and dance. It was just a really wonderful experience.
Oh, that's yeah. I mean that we that needs to be encouraged. So much more in the world. I feel like we just being connected to nature. Like for me, it's all about our connection to the way that nature works and being as close to that as possible on all levels. Not just like in the environment, but in
I'm
us.
about to start a.
Yeah, go ahead, Tanya. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I think I don't know if Melissa was trying to say something.
Yes, sorry, it was me.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so along those lines, I'm about to start a program that has been requested by a school that is very exciting because I think it's about the earth, but it's also about people connecting to what they can connect to and what beauty they have around them. And we live in New York City. And so here in New York, the easiest way to understanding beauty or understanding kind of identity in our own way often ends up being art or, more of a cultural connection, music, dance, art, any one of those things where you can find some ease and some beauty and some solace because we don't necessarily have the big fields to go lay down in. And a principal has asked that in return for being in residence at their school, if he could bring in students during our rehearsals. So we would be working and rehearsing and making dance, and my colleague would be making some theater. And while we're all working, the students get to come in and watch rehearsal, spend time with artists, and spend time with artists that spend a lot of time asking questions about life, the universe, and everything, and then dancing. And then they get to go about their day, and they're going to spend some time asking us questions and asking us why we do some things and why we do other things. And so it's not about trying to make them into artists, but it's about allowing them a moment in their day where they can walk into a rehearsal with professional artists functioning and doing our thing. And then they get to walk into their classrooms. And maybe the hope is that that bit of joy or exploration or unusual way of answering a question will begin to seep into how they do their schoolwork and how they answer their questions, maybe a little bit more creatively, maybe drawing something instead of writing something.
Right. I feel like what comes up for me a lot that I experience a lot is that, the more people talk about change or want to change things, the more we end up perpetuating the very thing that we say that we want to change, because it really is kind of like hard to let go and let go of control. Like there's so much, control, like everybody, not everybody, I don't mean to, make a generalization, but it's a very, very difficult habits to break. Like we want people to be like us. Like it's very scary when another person does something different. Like we kind of feel like a little bit uncomfortable, and then we get confronted with our own maybe insecurities. And so we try to control that by trying to control the other person. And instead of, like allowing and encouraging other people to kind of be free and color outside the lines or dance outside the lines and be comfortable with what, be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the beauty of it's one of the beautiful things, one of the millions of beautiful things, of letting 1 Billion Rising be what it is that, like we were saying before, the organization is very small. And so it's important that each person who's inspired to be part of the day or the year or to continue taking action is taking action and is inspired and is moving forward in their own way. And as Pangia was talking about, moving forward in trying to just see the world with a little less injustice, a little more at a time, so that it's about releasing that control.
Right.
Well, to join Melissa, this is Pangia again. It is going to the dance, why it is so important. I know you've all said it, but for myself, even though I'm an actress and I've moved, I know going to my first flash dance mob last time where Melissa had led that, it was incredibly freeing. And I know people are scared of stretching their limbs and being exposed to being maybe foolish, because it's somewhat, as you were saying, it's about control. We try to form a society that we can recognize, and we want forms and people that we can recognize. That's why guys have to be one way, girls have to be another. And dance is a real equalizer, because yes, we do have some classical forms, but still the body is the body, and what it can do is fantastic. And it can move in so many ways, and most people never move that way. And I think that's why Eve Ensler brought it out as one of the biggest mediums for 1 Billion Rising, just getting people moving. If people were dancing, female and male, then there would be no time for violence.
Yeah. How about that?
Good, that's simplistic, I know, but it's still very true.
I always believe, because I feel it with people around me, if we were to take, even half the energy that we use to be disconnected and be kind of opposing or against each other and put it towards coming together, then I mean, the change and the transformation that could happen, it would just be, it's just incredible that it is. It's the same energy that people are using to perpetuate, the separateness. That all we have to do is take that same energy and apply it to connecting instead.
But the separateness, really, to go back, sorry again, Pangia, this is really separating the feminine from the masculine, and this dialogue is really not had anywhere. No, not really. We don't, we women, since centuries, thousands of millennium, have been told to reflect, and boys, if they're told that they're sensitive, then they're called girls, and you start that way by dissing girls. You call, you immediately say girl is something wrong, and it's not just America; it's every society. It's not the past; it's the present. And watching our language, watching how we treat this control, as you call it, trying to control somebody into putting them into a form that we think is right, is one of the small steps that every person listening can do. Everyone can do this. Just be aware of the messages that we've received, because we all have to clean ourselves of the programming that we've received of being what a woman is supposed to be or what a man is supposed to be.
Exactly. I mean, it's there's so much work involved. There really is, like the rewiring, the deprogramming ourselves. When I was at the Omega Institute, and then I spent some time at the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health back in early 2001, 2, 3, around that time. There was a guy from Kripalu who, it was very simple. I mean, he was like a yogi guy, and he wrote on this, big, paper board thing that he was writing on, and he just wrote the words, past / present / future. And if you take away the present moment, all you have is the past and the future, which is basically the equivalent to a vicious cycle. So, without the present moment to break that vicious cycle, your past is just going to keep perpetuating itself. And I mean, I used to have, it would, people get confused out of what it means to be in the present moment. Like, people think, being in the present moment and living in the moment means hedonism and, going, people have that, but that's not really what it means to live in the present moment. That's their human idea of what it means to live in the present moment, that they're kind of infringing on what it means to live in the present moment, which that's not what living in the present moment really means. I mean, I know that it really takes so much practice to really be in the present moment. And, I really don't know if people are willing to do the work and to make the effort to cultivate the present moment and to confront things. It's about confronting and dealing with things rather than just perpetuating the same stuff over and over again.
I think, this is Melissa, I'm back. I fell away again, but I'm back. I think the thing that we want to do is we want to find the people who are willing. Yeah. And we want to move forward with those people. Yeah.
Yep. I agree, because I really, I hear a lot, people talk a lot about waking people up and all this and that, and you really can't. I attended a lot of 12-step meetings, and I like their philosophy. It's about attraction rather than promotion. People will be attracted when you're doing your thing. If you're trying to sell things too much or get people to do things too much, they're just going to tighten up and maybe, I guess it depends on, if you're too pushy, people are going to just clam up. And I think it's,
Yep.
you know,
But you
people-
should never be afraid of the seed you might be setting. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we get into being politically correct, but sometimes you do have to confront. And if it seems
Yeah.
pushy to one person, it may not be to another. That's
Yeah.
why, you know, trying not to do it for selfish reasons, but also not to have the idea that you're going to see the results right away. Because I have seen things that I've said where I taught a class about creation mythology where the women were the creators in old mythology and the boys in the class got very upset about this. But years later, they would come back to me and they'd say, you know, I thought about it. All these years they thought about it. And they said, yes, I can see, you know, my connection to be, you know, to my mother, to the feminine, to, you know, whatever that I was talking about.
That's fantastic.
So we have to dare. And that's, again, what 1 Billion Rising is about.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're like, we're cultivating each other. We have, you know, we have like a minute or so left. Maybe we can just, you know, again, like talk about like where people can find the schedule, the website, and things like that. For just the last like 2 minutes.
A quick way for people to find events is the 1 Billion Rising website and to search by zip code.
Okay.
There are multiple flash mobs, and then all of the flash mobs are a good way to hook back into our art activism group.
Okay.
And there's also a Facebook page that is the numeral 1 Billion Rising, parentheses, through art, and the number 4, justice.
If I could take the last minute to just talk about my trip to Gaza, that's on March the 5th, that I'm going with the organization Code Pink, and they've gone many times before. You know, they're attempting to be dealing with this, you know, this Israeli-Palestine, you know, takeover that's been going on, and the idea is to be we're supposed to be attempting to cross this border because they've closed a border and people are not able to cross over. It's like their window to the world, this border that has been closed. It's in Rafah, Rafah, and we're going to attempt to try to cross over this border. And I just wanted to, you know, I paid for the airline ticket out of my pocket, and you know, I have a Facebook page if anybody cares to make a donation. If you're on Facebook, all you have to do is look up Trip to Gaza, and it's the same thing on a GoFundMe. I you know, made a page, and it's just Trip to Gaza. It would be great if people, you know, donated. I'm not really a fan of asking for money and all that stuff, but unfortunately we kind of have to for now. And so I wanted to thank everyone for being on, and I hope I can meet you guys on Friday.
Yes.
Because I'm
absolutely.
Absolutely too.
So yeah, it was great. It was a great show.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
I hope to have you all back on again. Let's do it again soon.
All right.
Will do.
Thank you
Enjoy
all.
your trip. Bye-bye.
Peace out. Embrace your feminine side.
Enjoy.
Okay.
Bye.